Punk Goes Horror is a collection of punk rock inspired horror short stories brought to you by some of your favorite horror authors like Rachel Harrison, Liz Karen, Christoph Paul, and Brian McAuley, along with a whole band of others. Everybody took inspiration from a punk rock or punk adjacent song from their youth or modern times, or we went all over the spectrum. And they wrote a horror short story that was inspired by the lyrics, the tone, the general vibes of those songs. And I am so proud of the anthology that came together. It's eclectic, it's angry, it's funny, it's everything you would hope for in this.
I think that the real obvious place to start about talking about this book, obviously about punk. And so like the first idea with punk that comes to mind is when Kendrick was saying be humble and there was like the big flag around him and everything. Do you think, I'm kidding. That's everybody's been talking about that. So I figured like
it was such a good show. It was so good.
But anyway, so yeah, like that's my little like moment in time. I can go back and be like, oh, this is when that Super Bowl happened. So no, but seriously, we'll talk a little bit about the origin of the anthology, where the idea came from and stuff, because you kind of touched on it in your introduction. But when it's a theme like this, there's always a kernel of, it was an idea that grew into, is this possible? If it's possible, how does it work? So what was the start, and what's interesting about the process of getting it to where it is now?
This is actually going to be a really fun one to talk about, because Brian McAuley was here with me like for the inception of this idea and kind of like talked me through the growth. So the original idea for Punk Goes Horror was, it was actually really inspired by Patrick Barb. He is editing an anthology, And Someday We Will Die, inspired by Neutral Milk Hotel songs.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to Brandon Applegate, who runs Hungry Shadow Press, and I was like, hey, do you have any inspiration to like make this a thing and keep this going? Because I really wanted to do a My Chemical Romance, The Black Parade version of that. So I talked to him about it. He said no for various reasons that made a ton of sense. But I was talking to Brian about that kind of on the side, like, hey, if I'm going to go pitch this to other publishers, you're a really big name in publishing right now, and you're super like cool and rock and roll and all this other stuff. Like, would you want to jump in this as like the first invited author? And he was gracious enough to say yes. So I shopped that idea around for a second with the My Chemical Romance idea. And then a band that I like came out with an album called Whalefall at the same time as I was finishing Daniel Krause's Whalefall. It's like, hey, simultaneous like read and listen. This is really cool. It's like the whole punk goes pop, but like make it horror. And I was like, oh, well, crap, there we go. So then I twisted my pitch to that. Christina from Truborn Press jumped on it. And even then, it was this very like amorphous concept, like just write some stories inspired by punkish songs, and we'll figure it out from there. Everybody that got into this anthology wrote songs that understood punk music better than even I did when I put the call out. It's anarchy, it's rage, it's righteous anger. It's so many cool things that define just this style of music coming smash bang together in this cool mosh pit. And we ran with it. So back to Brian, I pitched Brian this idea like, okay, I found a publisher. It's going to be Truborn Press. They want to go Punk Goes Horror instead of just My Chemical Romance. So what do you want to write a story for? Like, what's a punk band or a punk song you'd be excited about? And he comes back to me with Dashboard Confession of Screaming Infidelities. I'm like, what the okay, sure. You know what? That is not at all what I was thinking. But you're Brian McAuley, and I trust you. And I'm so glad I did, because the story's a banger. I love it so much. I'm going to shut up now, though. Brian, what do you remember about all
this? I remember this very well. Yeah, I'm being psyched about the idea. You know, I played in a band in high school and continue to like do little acoustic covers on Instagram. Like music's really important to me and, always a big influence on my writing. And so when you pitched that idea, I was like, hell yes, that sounds fun. And yeah, I think when you first brought it back, it was like, punk, emo, hardcore. And I, of course, went straight to emo. And, I think my song choice is definitely the most far from punk compared to the others, probably, because it's a very whiny acoustic emo song.
I think I give Liz Karen a nod too. She went PJ Harvey, which is, I think, technically punk, but it's also like kind of out there on the fringes.
Yeah, a little fringy. But yeah, it was really fun to my goal with that story was to kind of, rather than tackle punk culture, kind of write a character who was kind of like a toxic emo boy, because I feel like, I used to be an emo kid and be really kind of whiny and woe is me and why doesn't the girl love me? And, as an adult reflecting back on those attitudes and how toxic they are and how certain, I almost said men, but we'll call them boys because they're immature and can be manipulative by using that kind of behavior. And so, yeah, the song just, I don't know why the song just was the first one that I just fully knew what the story was. And was really, I just had a blast writing it. And I had a sort of reference, an Edgar Allan Poe story that I won't name was a reference point that I had in mind as well. And I just kind of pushed it as weird as can be. I think that with my short fiction, I tend to go way weirder than with my novels and novellas, which are more kind of slasher thrillers. But short stories, I'm like, all right, this is my sandbox where I'm just going to get real weird with it. And that was my goal.
Wow. So this is my moment of vulnerability. I'll say a couple things. First of all, it might have been me overlooking something, but it took until this discussion right now for me to realize that the names of the stories connect to songs. But I chalk that up to, like, I've had a very busy reading schedule recently. So like I pay more attention to the story I'm reading than maybe the dressings that are put on it. But now things are kind of clicking for me a little bit more. But to take that vulnerability a step further, never really been a punk person. And so I was talking to my girlfriend the other day, and when I was posting on my personal Instagram, that's where I post like covers that it's the books I've finished. It's kind of my way of tracking the books I'm reading. I was like, ooh, I could put a punk song on here. It'll be all like themed and everything. And I was like, I don't know what to put. I came up totally blank on a punk song. Cause then I was like, well, if I just choose something random and then like, it doesn't make sense, I'm going to get, people are going to shit on me for it. So anyway, the closest I got, and this might be a weird, not even tangential reference, but I think that they technically qualify punk, even though they're very heavily electronic, is a band called Sheep on Drugs.
Oh, I don't know them.
So it's this British band from the early 2000s, and it's basically like really heavy drum and bass, like electronic music, but the lyrics and like the style of the band and everything is just straight punk. So like the whole aesthetic is like, if you're watching them with the sound off, you'd be like, oh, this is a punk band. The moment you hear the music, you're like, what's happening here? So that was the closest I got to like something where I'm like, this does qualify. Yeah. But the song I wanted wasn't available for Instagram. So it was a total failure, and I just posted it like normal. All of that is to lead into this question. Being so punk, themed and everything, was there any concern about only punk people would care about it?
A little bit. It is. Oh man, give me a second to put my thoughts together here.
Yeah. Because my general thought would be like as me feeling kind of like a poser, like there's something I'm not bringing to make the right connection. Being scared off from that perspective, not like, oh, it's punk, I don't care, but more like, oh, maybe I don't have the right knowledge for this.
Yeah. So I think something that I learned while putting this anthology together and really seeing it get solidified through the stories that were coming together was punk as a vibe as much as it is a like set style of music.
Sure.
Kind of the same way that horror is a vibe more than it is a set style of books. Like horror books run the whole gambit, right? We've got the psychological horror, we've got the slashers, we've got all sorts of other stuff, all just slammed together into this umbrella of this is what horror is. And it's one of those things like there's that old senator's quote. He was having to try to define what porn was in front of Congress. And he said, I can't tell you what porn is, but I can tell you it if I see it. Like, I
Sure.
feel like, right. I feel like punk and horror both fall into that same umbrella, and the vibe that they strive for is the same vibe. It's trying to draw out this emotion from us that is generally taboo in society. It's trying to make us feel something more than it's worried about the road to get there. So to circle back to your question, maybe the title puts some people off. Maybe they look at punk goes horror and they're like, well, I know one of those two. So, but I think if anybody cracks the cover and gets through the first 2 or 3 stories here, it's a horror anthology.
Oh yeah.
And then you feel the punk inspirations kind of helping color it, if that makes anything resembling sense. It's the leather jackets and the mohawks and the disdain for authority, and you can kind of feel that theme percolating around. These are just some really good horror stories. And I know I'm so biased saying that, but I selected them for a reason.
Yeah. I think.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that horror and punk go so well together because they're both kind of. It's a collection of outsiders, right? That if there's an anti-establishment kind of mentality that's meant to be very kind of in your face rather than like be subdued and subservient, like both punk and horror are like, no, I'm going to shove this in your face and it's going to be messy and loud because all of the like we need to scream about these things. That's what I love about the horror genre is that it tackles these subjects, the things that society doesn't want to talk about or look at, and it paints them in bright red blood, and punk again just like screams it in your face and doesn't let you not hear it. So I feel like that they pair really well together in that regard.
Yeah,
that's such a better answer than mine.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And then kind of digging into the blend between like the punk and the horror. So the punk was like the inspiration or like the foundation or the starting. Let's talk about Liz Caron's story because it came up a minute ago. Yeah. Down by the Water, ostensibly is a story about a girl who was raised to be this, and that didn't work for her. And I'm not going to talk much more than that about it. And so that feels like a punk setting, like a setup for punk. Like, you don't understand me. My parents are whatever, like, like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But written in a way where you're like, I'm like, it is so outside of what I would never imagine that to be like what came out of being inspired by that. But the story itself fits kind of perfectly into this book. So the actual like feeling that you're getting out of that story, it checks all the boxes, but in a way where it's like, I never would have expected that.
Yeah, I loved Liz's story for so many reasons in it. And I think, that punk angst of like child and parent conflict, right? That's so central, I feel like, to this genre of music. And to see her kind of spin that through this horror kind of fantasy lens, I think was really, really effective and hit the assignment, but from a direction that was nicely unexpected.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, hers was another one where I reached out and we knew we were bringing her in as an invited author. And her original pitch for the story was like a Little Mermaid sort of a thing, but make it punk and make it folklore. And like those three things don't go together, but also you're Liz Karen, so I'm not going to question you. Like, go do it. And like,
Yeah.
this is editing this anthology was the best practice for me for learning how to just shut up and get out of people's ways. Because when you guys pitch these things that sound so ridiculous and oddball, and my first instinct is, I don't know. I'm the one that's wrong. You all are
Yeah.
such great artists. You knew what you were doing, and you just needed somebody to say yes. And I am glad I did.
Thank you.
That's encouraging to hear that you had that kind of like self-awareness of you versus what your expectations of the art were.
Yeah, but it was also your edits were super helpful, and it was great to work with you on it because, you know, when you're doing weird work, it helps to have an objective perspective on things and to tighten it around the edges and do all that. It's a joy to work with an editor who has that clear sensibility.
Thanks. Yeah, I prided myself in reading all of y'all's stories multiple times until I could put all 14 other stories from the anthology out of my mind and like really get what you were going for with yours, and then just like not try to stop you but like find ways to encourage you instead of trying to wrangle you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting because I work as a screenwriting professor, and that's always the balance to try to find, right, with a writer when you're trying to give them feedback to improve the work in the direction that they're already headed, rather than trying to get them to write a whole different story. Try to find that kernel of, I see what you're doing here. Here are some tools or methods that might improve it. And I feel like that's what good editor like you can do.
All right, I'm going to start this next question by referencing a specific story, and I'm gonna say it was my favorite story in the anthology. So like, we'll just let the like anticipation build for a second.
Brian, what's your bet?
I am gonna say Max's story.
Oh, good one. I'm gonna go with Scott Bradley's. Let's lynch the landlord.
I'm disappointing both of you.
Oh,
the honor goes to Brendan LaFaro's Dying in New Brunswick.
Nice.
Because holy shit, like that story packs so much into a very small space. And I love it when people play with format and stuff. So there's interrogations, there's like someone's like a police record of something that happened. So it's like multi-format in this small short story. So it just did it for me, like in different ways. And the thing that I'm bringing up by mentioning this story is the fucking horror side of it, because it is, what did I write? This is not spoiling anything.
okay.
Something causes a bloodbath at a basement concert. And so like the point I'm getting to by kind of gushing about this specific story and highlighting it is that there is no lack of horror in the book. And what I think that's great about short story collections, anthologies, things like that, is that you can approach horror from many different angles. And that gives you the opportunity to be nuanced and subtle sometimes, or just kind of right in your face, which is what I feel like accomplished here. So were you looking for a balance of different approaches to horror, or you know what I'm saying? Like, how did you approach the horror angle of it?
Yeah. So the advice that I gave to a bunch of people that were reaching out during the submissions window, just like trying to figure out how to approach these different stories, was like find something that reflects the song as well as possible. So we had
Okay.
some people writing there's another something went wrong at a concert story in the book too. Wendy Dalrymple's Heads Will Roll.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Yeah 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 song. It's very bouncy. It's very light. It's not as terror filled, and accordingly, like her story is very like fun. It's very like kind of bubblegum pop as far as the story goes. But then you get to Brennan's story, like you're talking about, and he's referencing a Thursday song, which they're not the hardest band in the world, but they can scream when they want to. So there's like this grit to the vocals. There's this grit to the way that they're tuning their guitars and everything else. And I feel like he really channeled that into the story really well. As you're listening to the song and then you go back and read the story again, you can kind of feel them fitting together in a way that doesn't make any sense logically. Like I could not sit down and write out the formula for how to translate a song into a story, but that sort of, it's almost a slasher approach to letting the bodies hit the floor. I don't know. It was great. I loved it.
Yeah, it was really cool to see, given the nature of the anthology, there are a lot of different stories that touch on music and bands in different ways, but always from such different angles. And as we were saying before, just one of the things I love about horror is how many different subgenres and sort of niche little pockets of terror people can kind of dig into. And I love reading stories. Like I mentioned, Max Booth III wrote Kids of the Black Hole. That was a story that I loved because I read that story and I'm like, shit, I could never write a story like that. And I love it. Those are my favorite moments when I'm like, when I see like a writer's voice and digging into this wonderful story that's so weird and specific and wonderful. And that's what we get to kind of celebrate in our little weird punk horror pocket.
Max, I really enjoy Max's stuff, and you can tell when it's one of their stories that not necessarily exactly what you're going to get, but it's like there's a style or an aesthetic or something like that that's coming, and yeah, it was definitely a Max Booth story. Yeah. So anthology structure is always something that I find it. I did publish an anthology, but it was like 12 years ago. And it told me how fucking hard it is to like make an anthology. Where is it? It's right there. That's my book. Anyway, it's difficult and there's a lot that goes into it. So like there's rounds of edits and there's like back and forth and all there's other story stuff, but then you have to make it a book that's a good book on top of that. And so how you what's the Max sorry, I got Max Booth on the mind now. That Mitch Hedberg joke about comedy where he's like, you got to start strong and end strong. You can't be like pancakes, all exciting at first, but by the end you're fucking sick of them. And I feel like probably that applies to this too, where like you want to really bring people in the beginning, but you also want to end strong and leave them with a good memory. So what was your story order journey like? And was it just you or like who was involved in story order stuff?
That pretty much all fell on me. Christina gave me a little bit of input here and there, but for the most part, she just kind of like let me do whatever I was going to do, which was wild and crazy and cool and fun. But okay, how did this come together? So two stories really claimed their spot in the anthology immediately, with Eric J. Gignard's Smells Like Teen Spirit, and then Rachel Harrison's oh man, why did the title of her story just escape me?
This Could Be Love.
This Could Be Love.
This Could Be Love. There it is. The Alkaline Trio song, of course.
Even Brian's representing for our
there you go. Eric's story came in the open call window, and it is this very poetic stage setting. The whole story feels like it's building up to this big eruption or collapse or shattering of the world we live in. And it just, the whole time I was reading it and then rereading it and then rereading it again, it felt like a good album opener. I hate listening to individual songs for some reason. I love listening to albums front to back. And in so many of the albums I love, there's that song in the beginning where it's not even really a song yet. It's just a buildup of pressure and tension and strings and drums and anything else, building up to quote unquote song two, but really the opening track where they cut loose and okay, here's the band. And that's what Eric's felt like the whole time I was reading it to me. It was just like immediately when I knew it was in the anthology, it was first in the anthology because it just had that swell to it. And then Rachel's super similar sort of a feeling. She sent it in, and it is this very nostalgic story, pining for kind of the loss of, oh, how do I say this without spoiling the story? Pining for the loss of innocence, pining for the better days that came before the story, pining for like a lot of that sort of stuff. And there is this sadness and there's this heartbreak around it. And it just felt like, okay, everything's done. And we are looking at the corpses now and kind of like settling our minds with this is what it's all come to. It feels very terminal. And it just felt like exactly the right note to end it on. And even the final couple of paragraphs that she wrote in there, there's, how do I say this without saying it? There is something kind of wafting in the breeze as it is. And it reads just like that one last power chord kind of strumming out at the end of an album. It's just like, all of it is so poetic. And then I had 13 other stories, and it was a matter of just figuring out how to assemble them so that, kind of like your Mitch Hedberg joke, it doesn't feel like too much of the same all at once. Right. I tried to make sure that we had Jeremy Billingsley's story where he messes with time structure. He messes with what's present tense and past tense. He messes with what's really going on here in the story. And it's just this total mind cluck. I made sure we followed that with something much more palatable, much more straightforward. Like, okay, this is a linear story again. So you kind of got swung both directions. And then I mentioned Wendy Dalrymple's story. There is no blood in that story at all. Somehow she wrote a fully bloodless horror story that works. So I made sure we followed that with the thing with the most blood in it, right? And just tried to keep the pendulum swinging through the whole anthology. And something that helped was I literally made a playlist of the songs, and because all the stories were kind of matched up with the songs so well, I just mixed up the playlist a couple of times and listened through it, and just found the spot where they kind of gelled together, but also you got these jarring moments of shift. I don't know if I'm making any sense anymore. Brian, help.
I just can't help thinking of John Cusack in High Fidelity when he talks about there's the subtle art of making a mixtape, and you got to open with a banger, and then you got to take it up a notch, but you don't want to blow your load too soon, so then you got to bring it down a notch. And it really is. I feel like it sounds like was your process of thinking about, all right, what's the kind of flow of these so that it's not the same beat over and over again. I really loved how Wendy's story was bloodless, but also it kind of added to make it more disturbing. Just kind of uncanny.
Haunting.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
feel like it's the word I would use.
Rachel as a headliner makes sense to begin with because she's incredible, but then to read the story and see like, oh yeah, as you said, those final lines of the story are the perfect fade out on the stage. Again, like just the way that these stories flow, but also don't flow, as you kind of said, that like because they're so different, it's like just a total different left turn, right turn every time, and just kind of pulling you through the playlist. Now I'm excited to actually listen to the playlist of all these actual songs.
Did you make something that was something you could make public so that like readers could access that? That would be cool.
I did. So I made 2 playlists, and I posted them on the Nazi social media site that shall not be mentioned by name.
Yeah.
I need to repost them on the Blue Place now. But the first playlist was every single song that got submitted to us, or every single story that had a song attached that got submitted to us. And it is all over the place. Some people just totally ignored the punk idea. Some people pulled out these punk deep cuts from like the 70s. It is all over the place, and it is an adventure to hit shuffle on that thing and just go down the rabbit hole for a while. And then the second playlist that I made that is open for public listening, it is punk songs not officially affiliated with a certain anthology, and I will repost the link to that here soon.
That's a good idea. Because then I was thinking, like, in this type of situation with theme and everything and song inspired and all that, listening to the song while or nearby reading the story and feeling what the song's doing and seeing how it matches with the story was probably, I just hit my microphone, one of the most unprofessional things you can do. Don't hit your microphone while you're recording.
It's very punk rock though.
It's punk. Yeah. I'm going to smash a guitar at the end of this. I don't own a guitar. But like, yeah, was that part of like the, not quality control, but like part of the process of like, you didn't just throw a song name on here and it doesn't match the story doesn't match it at all, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
So you gave yourself a lot of work, is what I'm
yeah, right. Fortunately, I listened to so much music that the vast majority of the submissions that came in, I either knew the song or I had a sense of the song. And even the ones that I didn't, it was a 3-minute experience for me to go find it and be like, oh, this is what they chose. Okay. All right. But yeah, we had a lot of submissions where it was clearly a story that somebody had written for some other call and they just slapped a song title on it and tried to pass it off. Yeah. It was like, you missed the point, my dudes. But then there were so many other stories. Like there were so many stories in the open call that got it right. It was really encouraging and cool to see this dumb little earworm that I had in my brain. It's so many people latching onto it, like really pouring themselves into these stories. But yeah, part of the culling process was Christina and I agreed early on, we're just going to do one song for each band. We don't want this to just become a Nirvana anthology, because I think we literally got 10 different Nirvana submissions just for Nirvana. But we were trying to vary the styles of punk that we were hitting. We were trying to vary the popularity of the songs we picked. So like we've got Smells Like Teen Spirit in here. Everybody kind of knows what that is. But then we get some deep cuts too. Like Ian A. Bain wrote a story for a Gouge Away song called Uproar. And then to make it a little bit more identifiable, if somebody goes and looks for the song, we made it Uproar / the next song on the album, Until Every Cage is Empty. It is this really cool, hyper angry song, screaming against the cruelties of animal testing and imagining if a human being was put through those sorts of things. And Ian channels that into the story so well.
Yeah.
But I think like 1 out of every 1,000 readers that picks this thing up is going to see Uproar / Until Every Cage is Empty and be like, oh, Gouge Away. It'll be a little bit of a research project for them to be like, all right, what's this one? I don't even know. But that's what's cool about it too. With music, with stories, with anthologies, is just the fun of discovery, finding new bands, finding new authors, finding new stories. Yeah, I think I strayed from your question at this point. I'm sorry.
That's fine. If it was bad, I would tell you. I had the discovery thing made me think of this. I don't know why. Like, you know how like you have these experiences, these memories that are just locked in your mind, and you're like, oh, I wish it was a better memory that was like from something important, and it's not. It's just this dumb shit. I very distinctly remember buying. I'm 46, so just use that as context for what I'm about to tell you. Buying a pair of Airwalk shoes
Okay.
back in the day, and that's why I gave my age first.
Yeah.
And it came with a CD of just like a random CD full of different songs and everything, and that's how I discovered. I'm not going to think of the name of the song, but the song by the Toadies that everybody knows.
Possum Kingdom.
Possum Kingdom, yeah.
Hey.
So that's like the first time I heard that. I was listening to this like free CD that came with my shoes, and so you said Discovery, and that for some reason that memory just knocked loose and fell on me, and I had to share it because if I had to experience it, now everybody has to experience it. And what better way than that to lead into talking about Brian's story. So it was mentioned earlier a little bit, but since Brian, you are here and you could talk about it, why don't you kind of walk us through like what was the inspiration?
Yeah.
What do you have to say about your story?
Yeah.
Screaming Infidelities.
So I wrote a story inspired by Screaming Infidelities by Dashboard Confessional. That album is one that I just distinctly remember in high school having in my little portable CD player and just listening to on repeat in the dark in my bedroom, like a sad boy in suburban New Jersey. And yeah, I just love the idea of taking this kind of this sad boy anthem and just twisting it into this very dark story. And I think also I was probably channeling post-breakup vibes from having gone through a breakup, and was like, yeah, I'm gonna do my breakup horror story. Now's the time. But yeah, just keeping in this single character POV, and as I kind of mentioned earlier, of like the kind of that woe is me, like sorry, self-pity energy, just letting that flow, and then plucking little details from the song. He talks about this bottle of Beast is taking me home, and other little details like hair and
hair.
Yeah. And I don't know, there's something so fun about playing with the details of the song, but then trying to create this whole new thing with it, and leaving little Easter eggs for readers. Like that album, I snuck the song titles of every song on that album into the story, which is just a word here and there, and a few words there, just for folks who know that album as unapologetically deeply as I do. But yeah, as I mentioned, like for me, it was also just knowing I wanted to like let myself get a little weird with it, like color outside of the lines, genre wise, but still kind of aim for like, the emotion of the story and have a little arc to it. And short fiction is just so fun to play in, because when it comes to novels and novellas and screenplays and teleplays, like I'm very much a plotter. But with short stories, I allow myself to just kind of ride the vibes and see where they take me. Yeah.
Yeah. And short stories are always that challenge of like, you can barely say anything without spoiling something. So
yeah.
If it seems like we're not talking about it for very long, it's because I want to preserve the experience of like, why did they just mention hair when Brian mentioned hair when he was talking about it? You didn't have to read it to find out. But
I know it's
yeah, that was it. Then did you know, when did you find out your placement in the table of contents, and how do you feel about that?
Not until the arcs came, possibly. It's not a problem. As if I'm going to be like, hey, we need to talk about where my story, like, no. And yeah, I was delighted. I feel like, as I said, like Rachel's story at the end is so perfect, and I'm honored to be to be like the last opening band before her headline story. um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I just read the whole anthology this week, and it was just such a treat to see where everybody took these ideas and ran with them, and some writers who I know and have read other work by them, um, like Rachel and Liz and Wendy, and some writers whose work I had not read, some who I knew but hadn't actually read yet. Um, and I don't know, there's something really fun about like, as William talks about this book, he talks about us like being in a band together, right? And there is this
Mm-hmm.
sense of, even though we were off in our own weird little corners writing individual stories, to then experience it all together is like, hey, we all did this thing. We are in a punk horror band together.
Punk horror band. I like that.
Yeah.
So for anybody who has not read it yet or seen the table of contents, Brian's story leads into the final. Brian's is the penultimate story. So it leads into Rachel Harrison's story, which I haven't commented on yet, but like I got done with that story and I was like, Jesus Christ, like, holy shit. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe the feeling it gave me, but like I was like I had a view into something I shouldn't be seeing, is like the feeling that story gave me, in a way where I was like if this wasn't a story I was reading, I would totally be turning away because holy shit. And that's not my impression of Rachel. I love Rachel. I've read several of her books and I love the books, but it's got a density to it or a gravity to it that is different for me. And I haven't read any about, I don't know what other short fiction she's got out there, but I've only read a few novels. And so this was like a departure from my impression of Rachel, but in a way where I was like, holy shit, she can go where she wants to. And so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an incredibly dark story, and I'm always delighted to see her in that space because she's such a great horror writer. Yeah, but this story especially was like, woo, it's gnarly.
Oh my, yeah. And it gave me the impression, tell me if you guys thought anything similar, but that story gave me the impression that she can make me think whatever she wants to. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
I really got the feeling that she's like, I'm going to put the reader right where I want them to be.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's the. I think I've mentioned this before about her when I was on She Wore Black podcast, but I feel like Rachel is very deceptively, like, she's so precise with her words, and I think that's where, and all of her books I like breeze through in one or two sittings, but they sit with me for so much longer because she's packed so much into that very quick read. And so seeing in a short story her do that same, the sort of mastery of craft, as you said, and without spoilers, she puts you in a position where you have no choice but to witness a thing, and then it's just like, and that's it. Sorry, and you're like, oh god. As I talk in circles around the actual story.
But it manages to make you feel how the protagonist feels. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, without saying what that feeling is, but like, there's kind of a before and an after.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think she mostly writes in the first person with her novels, and did in this story as well. And she's so effective at that, at putting you directly in the character's shoes. And that was another thing I loved about this anthology, and I'm more and more am kind of on the lookout for how people approach the craft and what perspective they choose to put us in. As you said with Brendan LaFaro's, like, the sort of found footage mixed media approach was really effective for that story. Max's story, if I remember correctly, it's in the second person. It's the, you do this, you say that. And I loved that.
I think so.
I think that was such a smart choice for that story. And yeah, it really is fun in a collection. That's another form of variety, is the craft and the choices made by those writers to put you in different point of views.
Yeah. It was mentioned earlier and I didn't acknowledge it, but the idea that you start strong, but then you like kick it up a notch. and pulling teeth. I'm gonna. Is it Glenn? Is it Rolfe?
Oh no, that's one of those things that I've seen it written 10,000 times, but I don't think
And
I've
you
ever.
don't know for sure. Apologies in advance, Glenn. Or apologies, not in advance, because I already said it wrong or right. But anyway, I want to call out that story because the thing I liked about that was there was very little preamble before it just goes fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And it was just right. It got right to it and it just stayed there. And I really liked that. So I don't even know what I can say about that story other than, a kid's at a concert and there's a cute girl and it doesn't go the way he thinks it's going to go. But holy shit, like you talk about starting strong and then amping it up. I feel like that was a really strong way to just like be like, guys, buckle in because this is going to get kind of crazy in this book.
Yeah, so his story comes in second in the anthology, right behind Eric's story, which, again, Eric's story is the very poetic, like kind of build up of tension and everything else. And then when Glenn sent his story in, like, he's a splatterpunk nominated author for a reason. He can splatter the punks, right? And yeah, he just swung the mallet right at our faces and told us to deal with it, and it was great. It felt like exactly what Eric's story wanted to be building up to, in a way.
Yeah,
that's actually, now that you say that, that's a really good point. I'd say, yeah.
And it's a little romantic.
There's like a naive, hopeful, like
sure.
like a hopeful, more naive, But anyway, a little romance.
Bad romance, very bad romance.
There we go. You're doing the Gaga, the punk goes Gaga next, right?
Oh, dude. Gaga goes horror. Horror goes Gaga.
Yeah, Gaga for horror.
Punk Gaga horror.
Gaga for horror. See, yeah, we got some writers on this call, and it's not me. Gaga for horror would be cool. She did that American Horror Story season, so she's already kind of like dipped a toe. But maybe there's something.
She's one of us.
Yep.
Yeah. I have. All right. I don't know if I've
have
told
my
this.
people reach out to her people.
I'm going to tell this story of how I chose not to meet Lady Gaga, just because this is a kind of a music kind of theme to part of the conversation. But this was like in the late 2000s, and I was working for this LGBTQ newspaper in Chicago, and they had a series called Gay Idol, and basically what it was like American Idol, but at the bars around Boys Town, which is like the neighborhood in Chicago. And so I was working for this newspaper, and I would not volunteer, but since I worked for the paper, I worked these events, and it was like a round of singing, and then everybody would vote, and then the winner goes on to another round. So it was just like a bracket kind of thing. Blah blah blah. Get to the final round, and the whole deal was, there was going to be the final round. Everybody would vote. They would like name the winner. It would be this big celebration. And then there was going to be someone performing. And this was late 2000s, remember? And so all that's done, and it's the performance. And I'm like, this person is fucking awesome. And they're on stage, and they've got dancers, and they're singing. And it was just so exciting. And like, holy shit, this is way better than this little like local newspaper event at a bar I would have expected. But I was just wiped out because I'd worked all day, and then I did this event. And so when the event was over, I was like, I'm out of here, guys. I'm going to go home and crash. And then, a couple months later, it was Lady Gaga who did the show at the thing. And a couple months later is when she got just stratospherically like popular for it was like her breakout was like right after this thing. And I was like, yeah, I could have hung out with this person, and I was a little too sleepy. So
never say no to things. Always
I know.
Say yes.
That's that. I learned that lesson. So in the future, to not make that same mistake. But I can at least say that I saw Lady Gaga perform in a bar in Chicago. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, wait. Let's follow this up with the next version of this story, the happy version of this story. So since that experience, what is a time that you were feeling sleepy and you said yes, and you got to meet the person? or do the thing?
Oh my God! See now, I don't have an answer prepared for that. I'm the one that asks questions. But now I'll think for a minute. I'll make you a deal. I will try and think of an answer to that as you guys answer the question I'm about to ask. How's that?
No deal.
You have to listen intently to every word we say.
It's gonna be some weird silence where I'm like, dude, this time or that time. I was never tired again. Here's a thought that I had that I thought might be interesting. I'm going to ask you two versions of this question,
okay?
Because punk and horror are themes in this anthology. So I'm going to start with, what is the most punk experience you've ever had? And I'll let either one of you go first. You didn't see that one coming, I know.
Damn.
You want this one first, Brian?
Now you know how I feel.
I'm trying to think. Do you have one?
Okay, I'll jump on this grenade while you think.
Thank you. Like such a good editor.
My first real concert experience. Well, I kind of had two. So in middle school, I got invited to go to Six Flags one day by a couple of friends, and they had this weird little stage in the back of Six Flags, and they were like, yeah, there's going to be a band there. It's going to be Reliant K, which, if you don't know them, it's just like this Christian pop band, like very clean, very like center of the road, sort of whatever. So I went there and listened to them play, and it was kind of cool, right? Like, there were people up there making art on a stage in front of me. I got into it a little bit, cool, whatever. Went home, like kind of thought I knew what concerts were, was a little bit excited about it. And then the girl that I liked came up to me like a month later in the halls and was like, hey, I'm going to a concert. Do you want to come with me and a couple of friends? I was like, of course I do. I know concerts. I know what this is going to be. Let's do this.
Oh, beautiful.
So I walked into my first real concert. It's either late middle school or freshman year of high school. I don't remember which one, honestly, but one of the two. Walk into the Masquerade in downtown Atlanta, which is this falling down concert venue where there's three levels to the concert venue. Heaven is at the top where the big bands play, and then hell is in the middle, and then purgatory is down below. So you go in there and you go up to heaven, and the floor is sagging before anybody even starts jumping or anything like that. Like, we're gonna die here. And it is a band called Scary Kids Scaring Kids, and it is a band called Haste the Day, and then some other opener. But they are hardcore, like metalcore bands that the second they start chugging out the first riffs, everybody just turns and punches somebody near them and starts throwing each other around. One of the girls that we went with, she lost her shoe about like 3 songs into the set, and for the entire rest of the concert you just see the shoe getting thrown all around the concert venue and going up and down. I left with a black eye, a busted lip, but it was awesome. Like, despite being completely culture shocked and way out of my depth, I think part of me recognized that there was something occurring there, and like there was a part of me that could exist in that space that wasn't permitted in the real world. Like, I can't just run around shoving people and getting shoved by people and crowd surfing and all the rest of the stuff in broad daylight. You know, you gotta be in that falling apart shack. So I think that was my first that was my first exposure to kind of the punk aesthetic. Like I was saying at the beginning of all of this, and that punk mindset. And I think also in a way the horror mindset, because getting scared shitless for those first 2 songs and then realizing that there was a comfort in there, and all these people that are literally beating each other up are also sort of taking care of each other at the same time. It's weird. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it built up this sense of home in me for the first time, and I have been chasing that high again ever since.
Wow.
Brian, did I stall long enough for you?
Yeah, but now I have to follow that?
You gotta top it. You gotta reach that level.
I mean, I don't have as specific a story, but I did. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with a venue that was called Death by Audio. It was in Williamsburg,
No, but it
Brooklyn.
sounds great.
Yeah, Williamsburg, Brooklyn in the early 2000s. I was living in New York, and I was very much plugged into that scene and didn't realize, that the whole, like, you don't know what you got till it's gone, or you don't know you're in the good times until they're past. Now that place is like this iconic place of legend that people like write books and tell stories of. And back then it was like the place that me and my friends would go, and it was like literal hole in the wall,
Yeah.
just tiny venue, people just like banging around. And there was definitely a night where I met a girl and did illegal things together and stayed up till dawn kind of thing, and might have run across the subway tracks at one point, which is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. But yeah, there's something about New York in those days that I almost feel like it was, when I even as I say it, I'm like, that wasn't me though, was it? That was another person, right?
Wow.
Which I feel
Yeah.
like is a lot of people's perspectives as they get older, of like the younger self running amok in some city. But yeah, that space will always, the sights and smells of it are kind of baked into my brain forever.
Love it. I don't have. All right, so I have This is more of like you were saying with that venue in New York. I can say I went to a place that I know is spoken of with reverence, and I believe doesn't exist anymore in Chicago, which I think it was. Someone's gonna fucking roast me for getting this wrong when they listen to this. I know it, but I think it's Fireside Bowl. I think it was the name of the place, and it was like a bowling alley. And I could be wrong. This is me remembering how I remember things, but like it was like the basement of like a bowling alley, which was just this empty, low ceiling, just concrete, bad lighting situation where I don't even know if it was like a band anybody knew who they were, but it was like a bunch of just like, people gathered around these people who were plugged in and just screaming and thrashing around and everything. And I was like, in the moment I was like, this isn't really my thing, but I'm here, whatever. But now I can say, oh yeah, I was at a show at this place in their basement. And it sounds kind of cool, but like, it's not a badge I've earned. It's just like, I happened to be there at the time. So, but I can kind of coast on that coolness if it ever comes up.
Yeah, no, you were there.
I was there. So then obviously the other question that's coming is, what's the most horror thing that's happened to you?
Brian, I'm going to make you go first this time.
Damn. What's the most horror thing that's happened to me?
Or maybe that you've done. I don't want to put limits on it, but what's the most horror experience you have? How's that? And it could just be like being a fan or experiencing a cool thing or talking to a horror person, but it could be like, oh, I think I saw someone burying something. Like it could go wherever you want it to go.
Yeah, I obviously can't reveal where all the bodies are buried, but I mean,
you're like, I was hanging out with Clay McLeod.
Yeah, exactly. Always. But I'm gonna go sentimental with it because I'm representing the emo kids here, right?
It's on brand.
When before my debut novel Curse of the Reaper was published, I decided to go to StokerCon, and I didn't. This was 2022. It was in Denver that year. I didn't know anybody except Philip Fracassi, who then at the last minute wasn't able to go. So I was like, all right, I'm headed there. I don't know anybody, but I'm just gonna dive in and see how this goes. And speaking of Clay McLeod Chapman, I met him in person for the first time there. He ended up blurbing my book, met Jamie Flanagan, met so many wonderful people. Christian Morris, who I just had beers with last week. That was my first time hanging with him. Emily Verona. So many just... Trevor from Slay House. I'm going to just name literally everybody who attended StokerCon that year, apparently. No, but it really was for me, like, I didn't know that all of these people existed and congregated together and just had a place to just nerd out on our love for the genre without feeling weird without feeling self-conscious, and kind of like we were talking about earlier of like horror has always been kind of an outsider's genre. So to go to a place where like we're not outsiders anymore, we are it, and we're all celebrating it. And even just in the last few years to see how that event has grown and how the horror fiction community has grown just in 3 years has been so great. It's just a really supportive community, and so many anthologies like this one I think are just born out of people having connected through events like that.
My heart. Aw, you did go sentimental.
Yeah,
Wow.
now I have to follow that. I'll just take off in a completely different direction then, so that I don't even try to follow it. I'll just do something different.
There is a hand trying to break through the wall behind you, so you're not doing a great job of hiding the bodies.
This is Frankie. We bricked up the wall. There's some Amontillado in there with him. He's fine. But yeah, the most horror moment for me, I'm gonna go with like the most scared out of my mind moment. I went to college in Rome, Georgia, which is the middle of absolutely nowhere. Nobody's heard of it. If you need some context, it is the place that Marjorie Taylor Greene is from. Hiss boo.
That's horror enough right there, my friend.
Yeah,
like,
right.
We don't have to go any further.
Done. But there is nothing to do in this town, so me and my idiot college friends had to invent our own fun, which is never a great idea. So we came up with this game called Kidnap, where random nights we would break into another person's dorm room and kidnap them and throw them in the trunk of our car and then drive somewhere in town and pitch them out of the boot. There were 2 teams. So if one person got kidnapped, everybody else was supposed to sound the alarm and kidnap somebody from the other team. It was a whole thing. But one night I got kidnapped with my friend David, and we got released in what seemed like the middle of the woods. No lights, no sounds, no nothing. And we started walking, and we eventually started seeing like the lights of the quote unquote city in the distance. So made an angle towards that. And we're on the phone with our friends this whole time. Like, I don't know. We see trees. Like, what am I supposed to tell you? Come find us. So we start telling them like, okay, we see the city. So like come towards, I think I know this one building. So come towards the parking deck. Like we're on the other side of that. And there's a bridge here. Perfect bridge. We'll cross the bridge. We'll be at the back of the parking deck. You guys grab us there. We didn't realize that they hadn't finished building this bridge yet. So me and David are going over this bridge in the pitch black in the dead of night with like the city lights way, way, way away. And all of a sudden we both just fall.
Oh my God.
We landed in a river. Fortunately, it was a deep part of the river. But just that moment of, I don't know where I am. I don't know what's happening. I just know that gravity no longer exists, or gravity exists way too much, or whatever. And then this rush of cold and like being so certain for about 3 seconds that I was dead. And even to this day, there's like this like 0.001% chance percent of me that's still sitting here like, I think I died there. Like, I'm not fully certain this is real anymore. Like, yeah, like living the horror in that moment was probably the most horror thing I've ever had to do. And then like climbing out of the river with David and both of us being like, this is poking each other in the face. Like, yep, okay, we're good, I think. Both of us lost our phones. Our friends were freaking out. They had no idea what happened, just that we were gone. Yeah, it was a thing.
Rob, should we tell him?
The reason getting to edit this anthology feels like a dream is because it is.
I'll share a quick freaky thing. I don't know how horror it is, but back in 2009, 10, 11, I was living in Vermont and I was working at this graduate school. I worked in the human resources department, super exciting stuff. And I come into work one day, and I was not the type of person who like would just get phone calls. Like it wasn't. So I did like I was more like a project manager where I would like just like work on different little things here and there. I wasn't like the benefits person that you would call when you had a question. So no expectation anybody's going to be calling me. And I come in the morning to a voicemail, and I was like, oh, who called? I listened to the voicemail, and it's like some rustling and some like kind of like you can hear like sounds, but you can't really tell what's going on. And then in like a very, very, very light whisper, someone says, pick up, pick up. Can you hear me? Help. And then they say, oh my God. And then it hangs up.
Spooky as hell.
Have you contacted Cold Case Files yet?
No, like that's the thing. I looked up the phone number. I was trying to find whose phone number it was, and it was like some like carpet business or something in like New York State somewhere. And I really couldn't get a lot of information out of it. And never got another call. So maybe that was someone's last words. I don't know, but every now and then I posted about it on Facebook. So every now and then Facebook reminds me of this horrible fucking voicemail I should have recorded from when I was working in Vermont. So that was a creepy story.
Yeah, you win.
I don't know. Falling into the river and thinking you died, that's a little hard to top. We should give Brian another chance to like.
No, I'm going to be
not do the sentimental thing. Sticking to his guns, which is that's acceptable. That's fine. I do feel like I want to just like give. So, all right, before I give shout outs to a couple of other stories that I really was tickled by, are there any stories you guys want to mention that like come to mind that we haven't talked about yet?
If I start, I'll never stop. So
I know
I will excuse myself from this question.
I know. I feel like we talked about. I've mentioned a bunch that I'm just flipping through again to remind myself.
Box full of sharp objects.
Oh yes,
that Shannon Riley story. That all right. So without saying really what's going on, what that story did for me was like, they're not going to take it farther. Okay, they did, but they're not going to take it farther. And that's the story. It's like,
yep.
That kind of thing. So.
Yeah, very much enjoyed the escalations in that one.
But I kind of felt like I've been that guy, not in like the literal sense of what happens in this, but like I've been the person who's given, into a relationship maybe more than is healthy. And so I identified with like the feeling of that story a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. All good horror is an allegory. And that one, like it's so straightforward, like on the surface, but then the way that Shannon wrote it is just fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another one, I mean, we named it earlier, S.A. Bradley's Let's Lynch the Landlord, but I don't think we talked too much about it. And I feel like that one is, that's maybe the most epic story in the collection, I would say, just in terms of scope. It's wild.
I think it's like I was reading that story, and of the thoughts I had about that story, one of them was like, I needed to fucking read this right now. Like,
yeah,
absolutely. Like a damn the man. Eventually what goes around will come around kind of situation.
Yeah, that it definitely taps into what we were saying about punk being kind of anti-establishment, and why now is a great time for this collection to be out so people can really tap into that energy.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, good timing on throwing some punk out in the world. I was thinking that too. Like, now is the time for people to start thinking that like there are other ways to resist or oppose than maybe the polite ways that we've been doing it.
Yeah. I mean, that story in particular really struck a chord with me because I used to live in LA, and I was there participating in the protests where SWAT teams descended upon us. And so to to read a story that kind of captures that energy and then keeps taking it further and further into the horror direction, and in a very kind of satisfying comeuppance kind of way, while still being kind of fun and campy. I'm tempted to say a word about it, but I want to leave it because it was such a joy to come across it in the story, of the name of something. It's so hard to talk about short stories.
I know, short stories are tricky.
Yeah, it's a really fun one. It's just like bombastic, good time.
Yeah, and it's anybody that gets a chance, talk to Scott about this story, because hearing his background with these locations and with these characters and with everything else, it blew my mind over and over again how much of the stuff he put in the story is real, how much of the pain, how much of the hurt, how much of all of the rest of that. It is all at once the silliest story in the anthology and the realest, and I don't know how he balanced those two scales against each other, but I think I remember emailing Christine at one point early in the submissions process, like, this is going to be the most important story we put in the anthology. I think there's more horrifying stories, I think there's more fun stories, I think there's more, other things, but this one is a story that, like you said, Rob, you needed it right now. I needed it right now. Like I need this story to be in circulation so we can talk about it.
Well, it talks about what it taps into, and I'll probably say this poorly, and apologies if I do, but it taps into like the humanity that connects us, and how like people have a value, as there's like an intrinsic value to a person that doesn't match like what society's estimation of what a valuable person is. And I feel like there's a lot of reverence for something that it's hard to like, it's the, I know it when I see it kind of thing. Like, just because you don't fit the description society gives you doesn't mean that you're not an important, valuable person, and the things that you do aren't, like, you don't contribute to what makes something special. And so that's one of the things I think that this one hit really hard, was like valuing people, valuing a space, a tree, a park for what it is outside of what kind of the agreed upon society thing is.
I need to step in and redact something I said a second ago, because I'm thinking back on it. This is not the silliest story in the anthology. I think that honor goes to Kailey Schultz's All Hands on the Bad One, because that thing is insane.
So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was feeling like, as I was reading that, I was like, did we get some Bizarro in this book? Did Bizarro make its way into, and that's not really a term that you hear so much nowadays, but I've got I got plenty of Bizarro books on my shelves, and this was giving me whiffs of that type of over the top storytelling.
Yeah, this was definitely another one where I just delighted in how this is not a story I could ever dream up, and it's so inspiring to read people who, I love reading capital B Bizarro, capital W weird authors like this, and I think Max goes there too, and Danger Slater is another writer in that realm where I'm just like, I know it's gonna get real weird and bizarre and just kind of push the boundaries in different ways. So it's fun to have that in the mix with all these other kind of subgenres.
Is that, I'm not familiar with Kailey Schultz, but is that something that she's known for? Is that kind of like typical of her style?
I haven't read much of her either. I know she's got one other novella out through Ghoulish. So when she and Max were both coming into the anthology, it was like, okay, put two in different corners, separate the kids. Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
If you look at the cover for it, it's Saint Grit, and
Okay.
it.
Oh,
Yeah,
that book. Yep, that cover.
yeah,
Woo.
that book. I haven't read it, but I've seen the cover, and I feel like it gets the
It's
vibes.
pretty punk, I'd say.
But
Nice.
yeah,
Very cool.
her story was insane when it came in because I read it on the tail end of like 10 submissions in a row that were very straightforward, very depressing, very like we're gonna make you hurt and feel something. And I started reading All Hands on the Bad One, and at first I thought it was a prank submission. Like the first 2 pages I got through, it was like, this makes no sense. What is happening here? I don't understand what this author was going for at all. And
Yep.
then that transition to, I think they were just really drunk when they wrote this. And then that transition to, no, wait, no, this is brilliant. Like by the end of it, as everything starts coming together on us, oh, all of that was intentional. All of those weird phrases that got thrown in, all of those utterly insane left turns that the story took, and like the story beats that it seemed like it was skipping,
Yep.
but then it was like intentionally just not telling us that part of it. Like, oh my gosh, it's so weird and cool and great.
Yeah, that's something about. I think that Bizarro on its face, from my memories of what I've read, it's easy to dismiss as just absurd or like careless or whatever. But then you read something really well written, and you're like, there is a purpose behind this that I didn't know to be looking for, but now I kind of get it. And that's when you get like good stuff. I was you guys know Cameron Pierce? Cameron Pierce. So he was pretty heavy in the Bizarro scene in the early 2010s. He wrote a book called Ash Goblins of Auschwitz. So definitely like really into that, like that Bizarro scene. You know, he ran Lazy Fascist, the publisher. I'm aging myself here. Like I'm you can see I'm a little bit old school on this. But he has a book coming out from Clash, I think next year or this year. And so I was looking up Cameron Pierce and to try and like see if I could find information on that book that's coming out. And it was just this wave of Bizarro titles and like people he's collaborated, Carlton Mellick III and everything. And I was like, oh man, I totally forgot that this was like a whole thing, because it's diminished a little bit, but then like this story kind of brought me also back. So it's funny that I read this story not long around the same time that I was kind of remembering all of the Cameron Pierce stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at Cameron Pierce's covers right now, and kind of the same thing. Like, oh, I get the tone of these stories immediately.
Oh man, I could. I'm looking at some books I have. Like I have to. Every time Bizarro comes up, obviously Carlton Mellick III is like probably the most recognizable name in the genre, and this book title,
yes.
I don't think. Every time we meet at the Dairy Queen, your whole fucking face explodes.
So I show Anthony Cousins made a short film based on that, and I show that film to my students in my short film writing class because it's friggin' wonderful.
It's really cute and weird, but I haven't seen the film, but I've read the book.
Oh, it's great. It's on YouTube, so you can check it out.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So homework for anybody who's interested in Bizarro, look up Cameron Pierce, look up Carlton Mellick III, look up Bradley Sands. Is that a name that sounds familiar to you?
We found a blind spot for me.
Guys. All right. I'll throw up two really quick. He's got one called Dodgeball High.
Okay.
Which is exactly what it sounds like. It's like a Bizarro novel about this high school where instead of like football or whatever, like the main sport is dodgeball, and like it's like an exaggerated like how dodgeball, like how football takes over like the culture of a town or whatever, like kind of the same thing. And then TV Snorted My Brain is really good too.
Sweet.
Anyway, Bradley Sands, yeah. So, I didn't expect us to go down that road, but we started talking Bizarro, and then I just like couldn't stop myself. So,
Yeah, no, I'll go down roads.
Yeah. So now you guys, I'm giving you homework. You probably didn't expect that tonight. So, all right. So, William, what would you, and now this could be a pretentious question. It could not, I'm not sure, but like, anything specific you'd like for this anthology to do for people who read it? Like, are we looking for like a nostalgic, remembering how cool punk is, just an entertaining read, something deeper than that? Like, do you have any kind of aspirations?
I've kind of got two. I first, and this was kind of the mission statement going into the open call and everything else before the anthology really found its core, was just, I hope this transports somebody back to a time when they were really enjoying a song. If you're a metalhead and you love those mosh pit concerts, I hope that Brendan LaFaro's story takes you right back there. If you are emo sad boy and you are just like, so you're sitting in your dark room and that CD player is on, I hope Brian's story takes you right back there for just like 10 or 20 minutes and lets you be good and nostalgic for a second. That was kind of the point of the anthology to start with. But as the submissions came in, as the world kind of took its new shape coming into this year, US especially, I hope these stories can also now kind of give you a little rally cry within yourself that it's okay to be an individual. It's okay to be fucking pissed about what you see happening right now. And it's okay to go do something about it in your own special way, whether that's making art that's openly rebellious or whether that's going and joining a protest where you're about to get tear gassed and you're standing up for it. Or, yeah, I hope this can serve as a rally cry for you, for anybody who needs it right now. We've got trans rights stories in here. We've got the anti-establishment stories in here. We've got all the good meat of punk rock, and we're sowing the seeds of anarchy and all the rest of that good jazz.
I love it. This is not going to sound like it fits, but so at work, I actually work in an office. I go into an office and everything. And it being Black History Month, there was this like we had we had a lunch and everybody came into the lunch. But then this woman, basically acting as Harriet Tubman, told us her whole life history as Harriet Tubman, and she had props and she was shouting and she was talking about the Underground Railroad and she was like talking about all these things she did over the time. And like, not at the moment that I was watching this happen, but like in general, I was like, that's punk as fuck. Like all of the stuff that she did to like not only free herself as a slave, but then like free other people and like establish this whole network and everything. That's resistance writ large. And so you talking about this book kind of inspiring people made me think like there is so much like fucking punk ass things that happen throughout history that maybe we don't associate with it, but like there are things that are like parallel to the feelings and the you know, what am I trying to say? Style, the culture of what punk's talking about.
Yeah. You said that much better than I did. I've just been falling back on the word vibes this whole night. There you go.
Vibes is a more up-to-date term. I've established I'm the old person on this call. All right. So to kind of bring things to a close, we've got this. This is coming out. It's March 11th.
Yes.
Oh, I got that right. Usually I have to write it down. So obviously I'm encouraging everybody to pre-order. I think I went right through Truborn's website.
Yep.
I usually try to do that. If it's a small press, go right to the website. They get the most money, that kind of thing. But like people should definitely pre-order this. But what else do you guys have on the horizon? Like, what's the next thing we can look forward to coming from the both of you?
I have a new novel coming out September 2nd from Poison Pen Press. It's called Breathe In, Bleed Out, and it is a slasher murder mystery set at a spiritual healing retreat in Joshua Tree, California. I'm just genuinely giddy about this book. The cover will be revealed soon, and it's just phenomenal. And I just had a blast writing it. So, yeah, and my past work, if you haven't read anything, Curse of the Reaper, it's just Hollywood horror slasher, and then Candy Cane Kills and Candy Cane Kills Again, the second slaying Christmas slashers. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. And just in general, if you pick up Punko's Horror and you enjoy anybody's stories in there, I encourage you to go seek out their other work. You know, I feel like anthologies are a great kind of sample platter of different voices. And if one resonates, please go support that author. Because as we discussed tonight, there's so many different vibes in the book. So follow your vibes.
Now you're making fun of me.
No.
Beautifully said. And I will say that, like, discovery, like, that is an opportunity for discovery. If you see the TOC TOC, who am I right now? You see the table of contents and you recognize 3 of those names, say yes. Like, if it's 2 names of people that you like, why wouldn't you say, oh, who else would make sense to go with these folks, and then discover a new author and then run from there. So, like, yeah, I absolutely love the idea of anthologies being a way to discover new people. The other thing I've noticed recently, and I'm saying this because StokerCon's coming up, the way I discovered Chuck Wendig was through, like, he was nominated for a Stoker. And so, like, I was like, oh, I've read all these others on the best author or the best novel list. I haven't read this person. That's how I started. So, like, yeah, there's finding great ways to discover new authors is just gonna end up making this happen, which is, I'm pointing behind me to this fucking room full of books. So, William, what about you?
I've got a couple of things kind of on the boiler for 2026, but for the most part, I'm just trying to stay out of the way tonight. I'm trying to uplift everybody else in this anthology as much as possible. So Brian is going to undersell himself, but he is the king of the slasher novel right now. I cannot wait to see what you've got coming next. The Candy Cane stories are deliciously, like, cinnamon Christmas mistletoe flavored. I don't know. And Curse of the Reaper remains one of my favorite meta slasher things in existence. Wes Craven, eat your heart out. Brian's here now.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
So yeah,
I appreciate it.
Well, I have.
And of course, I know I'm saying this to somebody wearing a Jade Daniels is my final girl hoodie right now. So, like, all respect to Stephen Graham Jones too.
I didn't invoke him. You did. Well, I guess I did. I guess I started it. But I will say that of the folks that I kind of, like, pal around with online, everybody's excited about Breathe In, Bleed Out. And so, like, that's the thing. Like, I am among this group of kind of, like, influencers / reviewer, whatever folks. And, like, we're on a Discord, and everybody kind of, like, flexes when they get that arc, you know, like, there's a side of, like, being a not writer where it's like, I got this before everybody else did. And, I know that once that one starts making the rounds, that that's going to be a flex when that one starts coming out. So I'm telling you right now, and I'm going to let you know I was right, because here's people flexing. So, William, so here's the reason I'm going to prompt you to do this. You said that your appearances that you're doing to promote this include other authors. And yes. So I'm interested in hearing about who else is going to join you for some of these. And so, like, what can you tell us about where you're going to talk and who you're going to be with?
Okay. Oh, I'm going to get the names of these wrong. I'm going to get...
Fuck it up, man.
Let me see how I can do here. Top of my head. we are going to be joining Anna Rose Reeds. And on that show, Rachel Harrison and Liz Karen are both going to be jumping in with me. So that's going to be a great time.
Not bad.
We are going on We Bleed Orange and Black, Jeff C. Carter's podcast. And I think that is the one that Kailey, Schultz, and Shannon Riley are going to be on. We are going to be on Talking Scared. I think Wendy Dalrymple and Brian McAuley are scheduled to be on that one with me. Is that right? Is that the one? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Oh no, there's one more.
I feel so cheated on. Right.
Oh no, there's one more.
I didn't get the Brian exclusive. He's stepping out on me with Neil McRobert of all people.
Polygamy is punk rock, I guess.
That's true. That is. Maybe, I don't know. Actually, is that true?
No,
is that true?
So. No.
I don't know. We're vamping while somebody looks at their notes.
Right, I'm flipping rapid.
Is it a candy cane tattoo on your?
Oh yeah. So I'm getting tattoos for each of my books. So I have a little scythe for the Reaper and a broken candy cane for the respective 1 and 2. Hey, thank you. Sweet. Oh, sweet candy cane.
I'm going to give you an opportunity. Everybody that I've had on my podcast who's published through Shortwave has just raved about the experience with Shortwave. So we might as well keep that streak going because
perfect.
I love Shortwave, and you can see the little box.
Well, it's about damn time somebody told the truth about how terrible. No, I'm just kidding. I even feel bad even joking about that because Alan is the purest, most wonderful, creative, supportive human, and I just love seeing how much his press is growing, all thanks to the hard work that he's doing. The Killer VHS series is so friggin' stunning. Those covers by Mark Willetich are just nuts. I can't wait to read. We mentioned Patrick Barb. He's got the new one, Night of the Witch Hunter. Laurel Hightower has one coming. Ooh, yes.
I didn't realize he signed Laurel. Yes.
I hope I'm not. I hope I'm not the one breaking that news. No, that one's definitely.
If it's a 25, yes. It's been announced.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. But and then I also read an arc of Todd Kiesling's novel with them, Sundowners Dance. It is.
I have that. I have not had a chance to read it yet, but I think I'm going to have Todd on. For
good.
That,
It's fantastic. I loved it so much. But yeah, Shortwave. I love seeing them continue to grow because he deserves it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Which now I feel like we're Truborn is the one who made your anthology, and so we should probably give them some props as well. Yeah. Didn't they do Ross Jeffries' Metamorphosis? Because I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Pretty excited about that's I'm tracking that one now. It's on its way to my house, and I'm very excited about that too.
Perfect. Yeah, I had the honor of editing that one for him, and it is this disgusting, vile, fascinating, amazing little head trip of a book. Get ready to just sit in the most wretched person's brain that you can imagine for 300 pages. It's
wow.
Oh, it's so sick. It's so sick. The other podcast though, Books in the Freezer. How did I forget Stephanie? Wendy's going to join me on Stephanie. Books in the Freezer also, along with Christina. We're actually going to force the publisher to come talk with us too.
Beautiful.
Love it.
Well, that's exciting. I was thinking about how Max has their own podcast for Ghoulish, but isn't very active with it right now. And the last time I talked to Max was it Abnormal Statistics? Maybe it was something else. Anyway, kind of like cajoled them into or guilted into doing more episodes. And so that research for a while, but it isn't really active right now, but that would make sense too. Like go on the podcast of one of your so maybe I'll send them a message and be like, hey,
force him out
Come
of
on.
retirement
Yeah.
again.
Not like Max has enough to do already
No.
or anything. Good Lord. With the store, the publishing thing, the conference, so many things. Credit to Max. Max is a very busy person.
Yes.
So awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to every podcast. I can't say that I've listened to all the podcasts you mentioned, but I've listened to most of them and can vouch that they're awesome. So please check those out as well and hear the stories from other people's perspectives. Thank you both, Brian. I'm so glad that, I feel like we definitely are people who have been in the same orbit and finally connected. So I'm very happy to talk to you. William, thank you for putting this whole book together and giving us these scares and weird moments and stuff. Thanks for all your work on that. It was a really cool reading experience.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks so much
Glad
for
you
having
enjoyed it.
us. We appreciate it.